I think this really ties into the humanizing stories we've seen, with Saint, with Mithrax, Ikora, even to a degree Lakshmi and Arkjal, Executor Hideo. Like, we've seen a side of so many characters that they have kept hidden. Like, this has really brought a lot of things to light this season, either intentionally or unintentionally, for us through the lore, through the actual story that we see play out in the cutscenes and in the game. And I think this is just one of those humanizing touches that, like, if you've never really cared for Zavala as a character, I would urge everybody to read this and to read the final piece that we read last week of the Under the Endless Night book, because I think it paints a very different Zavala than the one that we are presented with in game at times. I think especially up until Shadowkeep, we were presented with, not even Shadowkeep, I would even argue, like, Season of Arrivals is really when we started seeing a change in him. But I think over the last year, Zavala and Saint have quietly become the two best characters that are in the game today.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I like Crow has had a lot of growth in a very short amount of time, but Saint has had his entire worldview changed when it comes to the Elixni over the course of a season.
Yeah.
We talked last week about how he declares that the Elixni are his people. That he has to protect them.
Yeah, I mean, we talked even at the beginning of the season where, like, with everything that happened within the last year in terms of, like, racism and just all kinds of things, and people trying to do it and maybe succeeding in some ways and not in others, that a game like Destiny, a game where you're a space wizard shooting aliens and robots and stuff, like, tells one of the most compelling stories about racism and changing of the views and
just humanity.
Yeah, and it's incredible. Like,
it's an unexpectedly deep game. Like, I've always enjoyed Bungie's storytelling, but I think use something, especially what they've done over the last year and a half or so. I think ever since, or I would say since Arrivals, the story that they've been telling has just been, the narrative team has knocked it out of the park.
Oh yeah.
We've talked about it a lot, and I think that's really one of the big strengths right now. Like, there may not always be the content for you to make this like your everyday or every week game, but the story is enough to keep most of us there for about 2/3 of the season until it wraps.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go and play something else, which is the way that the Bungie has always said they want us to play their game.
Yeah.
They want you to be able to dip in, out, and that's fine. Like, those of us who are obsessed with hoarding Bright Dust or getting everything from may log in every single week. Those people will remain nameless on this show. I think
his name is Fosh Ginny.
Yeah, something like that. God, fuck that guy. I think that this type of lore, though, really brings back to these NPCs have like they are brought alive in such a way. Like, I would never expect to read something like this in the Halo universe unless it was in a novel. I wouldn't expect an in-game lore piece to give me something like that. I mean, we didn't until Halo 4, really, or excuse me, 3, when we got Born Stellar and the Diadact and the Librarian and things like that. Like, Destiny is doing something that not just shooters aren't doing, but games in general aren't doing, and that's telling a humanizing story. But you have to dig for less and less now more and more of it is on the surface. I see more people on Twitter and on Reddit discussing the lore like this than I ever have before. Like, they're not waiting for a Bife video or for Mylan to put something out. Like, they are straight up wanting to talk about it and have discussions. And I think that's something so powerful that brings us together in this game. And it's like, this is a human emotion. This is one of the few times I think we've seen Zavala act like a mortal human. In this moment, he is not immortal. In this moment, he's taking stock of everything he's lost. He's taking stock of his wife, girlfriend, side piece, I don't know. But he's clearly remembering somebody, and I expect that the story with her isn't over quite yet. Bungie likes to lay things down in the lore and then address it later on.
Yeah.
And if that's any indication, I really need them to put the Guardian bookie into the game. So But that does it. That is a final, very short lore corner on Season of the Splicer.
Powerful
of course,
one,
next
though.
week. Yeah, a very powerful one. We've had so many powerful ones this season.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like sometimes even like the smaller lore pieces that we do is just, it's powerful, even more powerful than the bigger ones, right? Like, it's just...
Right. There's always the expanding story to talk about, you know, like there's the coup in the tower, what Crow is up to during this season, you know, since he's largely off screen. You know, of course, there was the Kaito lore last season, and there was what Osiris was having Crow do, and this and that. But then there's scenes like we got in Survivor's Epitaph, where Shaxx and Mithrax have a moment talking about Six Fronts and Twilight Gap, about who was the real monster there. There's the cutscene we get with Saint, where he finally realizes how the Elixni see him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was Saladin, you know, being told he couldn't see Zavala by Faux Cyrus.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just all these moments that are, you know, we talked last week about, you know, Amanda and Neek, you know, talking and bonding over fixing Pike and a Sparrow together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's just these, it's the little moments in this game, I think, that get me just as much as the Books of Sorrow, or as much as, you know, taking down literal inner space gods.
Yeah.
But it's reading 5 or 6 paragraphs that's like, oh shit, like that's what the people in this game, like, is their motivation to keep fighting. Like, now I feel like I understand Zavala a little bit better than I did at the beginning, even at the beginning of the season, even though we learned so much about him this year. I feel like I respect him even more as a character now, like knowing this is in the back of his mind every time he makes a decision.
Yeah.
He didn't want us to go chasing Cade because he didn't want us to end up like Cade or like his wife. He didn't want Ikora to end up that way. He refuses to let the people of the city end up that way. Like, now it kind of explains why he's the way he is in the dark future.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's a storyline that's been in the back of my mind all year. Is the dark future. So
yeah.
Of course, we come back next week. We'll start talking about seasonal lore. Gets a few weeks to get our bearings on the new season, and it is a really long season, so we gotta kind of watch what we do when we do it. I want to do an expanded Savathun breakdown, an updated one, since we have so much more over the past year than we did before.
Right, and also, like, I've been putting this in the descriptions of the episode, but if you have, like, especially this season in particular, if there's stuff that happened before Beyond Light, or even like Destiny 1 or anything, like, if you have lore suggestions that you like want to learn about, email us and we'll try to weave it in, because this is going to be a long season.
It's a very long season, and we would definitely like to take your suggestions and, you know, answer what you want. Like, this is probably going to be a 6-7 month season for us. We're going to run out of things to talk about at some point. So, but with this to talk about seasons, Corey, Splicer is coming to an end. We have 4 or 5 more days. I have 1 more Grandmaster Nightfall farm tomorrow. Finally get this stupid Uzim snipe I have not gotten at all. And what do we think? What do we think overall? Like, let's start with the narrative.
I think that the seasonal narrative was good. Like, I really loved I love Saint and his change of heart, and like just the Lakshmi 2 kind of, you know, oh, I'm gonna try to change everybody's mind, and then she's dead. Like, I love that aspect. I really loved, you know, getting more Mithrax too, right? Like, I feel like we've been talking about Mithrax for a long time. Just because,
it's been a long time coming.
I mean, he's been around, but he hasn't like really been a focal point of the season, or of the series until recently, right? And I love how, you know, him and Saint are now kind of like best buds, kind of, you know.
I need a buddy cop comedy with those two.
Shooting Vex together, dude. By the way, if they ever make a Saint 14 and Mithrax statue like the Stranger one.
Oh, insta-buy.
Yeah.
Insta-buy. You gotta think that's the next one now, right?
Well, let's see. What is the next one? Eris is the next one, right?
Well, so they usually announce one towards the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So, or after a reveal. So I'm expecting to get one announced here for this fall.
Yeah.
And I really hope it's Mithrax and Saint.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've talked about, like, there are so many statues we would buy, not to get into collecting talk, but there's so many we would buy. That would instantly be at the top of my list to get, is if you had one of them back to back.
Yeah. Yeah, or like one of the, like, just standing next to each other, like the scene at in the epilogue, like them just, yeah, that'd be so awesome.
Oh, I would pay so much money for that. But so we had that. We brought factions back, only to lose them again.
Yeah, which I think is
kind of cool to see Lakshmi at the forefront of things.
Yeah, because, like, we don't really see the factions at the forefront ever. You know, like in Destiny 1, it was like, oh, well, I want the Dead Orbit exotic Titan mark and wear it around, right? But other than that, or like the faction rallies in vanilla, but like they're like not real characters. They're just like the Dead Orbit goth guy and the future Warcar robot lady, and it's just like, oh well, Lakshmi is like having her at the central point and actually having her be like the, I guess you would say, the point where Saint and Mithrax kind of, you know, she's like the link that chains them together almost to an extent, right? And
it backfired spectacularly on her.
Yeah, and it was awesome. Like I really loved that. I think that this whole expansion storytelling wise has just been, God, it's been so top notch. It's been the best.
It's been great.
It's been the best Destiny's ever been. I will say that for sure.
I would say in terms of the storyline, I agree with everything you've been saying. I have two things that didn't quite land for me.
Okay.
And I really hate that I have to point these out, but remember when we had all those taken orbs in the tower and nothing ever came of it?
Oh yeah.
That really bothers me, and that was obviously supposed to meant to be lining up with Kira showing up. And in Kira, like, she's not dead. We know she's not. She's likely just escaped into the Vex network, or that was like, there's no way she's not going to be in the Savathun raid. But
really anticlimactic.
Extremely anticlimactic. I was really bummed that, because like when they name dropped her, I was like, oh, finally talking about her. Like, I've been waiting for this since Forsaken. I am so excited about this. Like, the murder battery is, and then it was just underwhelming. I thought it was a cool fight, but it was just underwhelming. Like, you talk about things that should have been, I guess I'll shift into while I'm saying this. Like, you talk about things that should have been strikes, and that for me should have been a strike.
Mm-hmm.
You're going through all of the expunge missions, through chunks of them, to get to Kira, and the boss fight, I mean, there's a decent amount to do there. You know, you have to take down both sides. You have to kill her. Like, I did it solo. I think that provides a fair enough challenge that it could have been a strike.
Yeah.
And it should have been. I mean, that is the kind of content that that's the one complaint I still have about Seasons is you're going to lose content like that. You're going to lose cool content like Presage, like Harbinger. You won't lose Proving Grounds, thankfully. That strike will be in that's a strike. It'll be in the game, but this should have been a strike.
Yeah.
And so help me God, if you don't use this aesthetic for a Crucible map and a Gambit map, I'm going to turn on Find Your Location, and I'm going to show up at Joe Blackburn's house and be like, dude, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Like,
you have the perfect aesthetic here to build some maps out of that would be truly unique in this game, and you haven't done it.
Yeah.
And I think that's when we talk about seasonal content, I think Battlegrounds were a little bit more engaging.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think they took a lot longer to do.
Yeah.
A Battleground could take about 15 to 20 minutes to do. An Override you could conceivably have done in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I liked Overrides, but I did get I think the seasonal arena model has it. I think I'm finally done with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, I look at all of the events we've had since they started doing seasons. I'm not going to count Opulence or Black Armory or anything like that. I'm going to say since the beginning of actual seasons. We had the Vex Offensive. We had the Sundial. We had the stupid fucking public event that was across like 4 different planets. Seraph Towers, which is, God, it's the worst fucking thing Bungie's ever made for Destiny. I swear to God. You had the Arrivals public event, which was much, much more appealing.
Mm-hmm.
You had Wrathborn hunts, which was a nice change of pace. You could easily do those solo, which I really appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Just, the rewards were not good at all.
No.
You had Battlegrounds, and now you have Override. You have Override. You had Override and Expunge, which I think really taxed on a lot of people. You had to do so many expunges for the seasonal title.
Yeah.
And for challenges. And it was just like, I was just beating my head in because I spent hours running those in a row just to try and get them done.
Yeah.
And it was just terrible. Those were missions I feel like you do like once or twice and you're done. If you want to go run them extra times, like in subsequent weeks for powerfuls, go for it, but don't force me to do them.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely felt forced into doing them.
Yeah.
I think Override is fun. I think it's a mindless little arena activity, but at a certain point, I think seasonal activities need to evolve beyond that. The reason why we're still talking about the Menagerie is it did something that no other event did or has done since then, but it also took an entire studio working on it.
Yeah.
To my understanding, that's what Victoria's Visions or High Moon, one of those two, was working on exclusively.
I'm pretty sure it was High Moon.
Okay. So one of them was working on that exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
And that's bonkers to me. That is absolutely bonkers. I hope with how much Bungie has staffed up, they can start exploring things like that, especially if these are going to be in all year.
There's also got to be a middle ground though, right? Where like you can do something as interesting as a Menagerie on a smaller scale. You have I think you could do that. Right?
I think that part of the thing that we're talking about with this comes down to I think we're tired of running the same type of activity. Like, we can target our loot better than ever now with Umbral Ingrams. When we talk about Menagerie, so much the fond memories we have of because I keep seeing the loot was so good, the loot was amazing. No, you guys are thinking of how the loot was when we had to literally make a chart of things you could get from the rune combinations. And you are thinking of when it was glitched and we all ran back in and out of the room 6 different times trying to jam our rune combinations in to open the chest again. When it was the actual rewards, everybody hated it. Because it was 20 minutes for one piece of armor or for one gun.
Yeah.
And it was real bad. Like, we look at Menagerie with such rose-colored glasses. I think ideally an activity like Override is probably what I expect from a seasonal activity, as long as the storytelling is good.
Yeah.
I want the storytelling missions to go beyond, go run this with this specific weapon this week, and then come back and talk to 3 different people and it's over. The dialogue is great. The lore piece is great. Give me something more compelling for the story mission, though. And I think that's something that they did really, really well in Chosen was, we're going to divert you to go do this lost sector. And you gotta go pick up something you've never seen in there before. Or you gotta go to 3 different lost sectors. You gotta run this strike. I think doing things like that makes it much more engaging than just, go do Override like 3 times until you get all the percentages you need, and then you can come back and talk to us.
Right.
Like, I think that at some point that formula has to evolve. And I think that needs to happen fairly soon. Because I think veteran players who play every single season, get like 200 levels on their pass every season, like myself, are starting to get real tired of that formula. Yeah. I played, as much as I enjoyed the season, I played probably the least I've played a Destiny season in probably 2 years this season.
Yeah.
The last time I played this little was when I sat out during Joker's Wild. I cannot remember. I played more during Season of the Worthy. If I was earning XP at the same rate I had during Worthy, i.e. without the challenges, I would have finished with like maybe 120 levels on my season pass. Maybe. And that would have been by far the lowest I've ever done.